Egged on by friends, my wife staged a fake breakup to test me. One sentence from me, and she fled the room in tears. I never thought I'd catch my wife rehearsing my emotional breakdown like it was some kind of performance art. But there I was, standing in my own hallway, listening to her plot the destruction of our marriage for entertainment. I'm Ryan, 32, construction project manager for a mid-sized firm in Denver. I make about $78,000 a year, nothing spectacular but steady work that keeps us comfortable in our 3-bedroom ranch in the suburbs. I've been with Angela for 6 years, married for 4, and until that Tuesday afternoon, I thought we had something solid. The kind of relationship where you don't play games because you've already won by finding each other. Shows what I knew. The client meeting got canceled around 2 in the afternoon, some permitting issue that pushed everything back a week. My foreman told me to head home early since we couldn't start the foundation work without approved plans. I texted Angela that I was coming home but got no response. Figured she was deep in one of her true crime podcasts or maybe napping since she'd mentioned being tired lately. I pulled into our driveway around 3:15, noticed her car was there along with that obnoxious white Range Rover that belonged to Linda, her book club friend who I'd never trusted. Something about the way Linda always looked at our house like she was calculating its resale value made my skin crawl. I grabbed my lunch cooler from the passenger seat and headed for the side entrance we always used, the one that opens directly into the mudroom off the kitchen. That's when I heard Angela's voice coming through the partially open window, animated and excited in a way I hadn't heard in months. "So I just say I need space to find myself?" Angela was saying, her voice uncertain but intrigued. "That's the opening line, but you need to really sell it," Linda's voice responded, sharp and confident like she was coaching someone through a sales pitch. "Tears if you can manage them. Remember, we need to see if he'll actually fight for you or if he's just coasting on autopilot like most husbands." I froze with my hand on the doorknob, something cold settling in my stomach. Book club was supposed to be about discussing novels, not whatever psychological experiment they were planning. "I don't know if I can cry on command," Angela admitted. "Practice in the mirror beforehand." Another voice chimed in, Heather maybe, the one who'd gotten divorced last year and seemed determined to recruit others to her misery. "Think about something sad, like that scene in The Notebook when she doesn't recognize him. Works every time." My hand dropped from the door. I needed to hear more of this before I walked in and ended it. Slowly, carefully, I backed away from the entrance and moved toward the living room window where I could hear better without being seen. The rational part of my brain was screaming that this couldn't be what it sounded like, but the evidence kept mounting with every word. "The key is to mention couples therapy as bait," Linda continued, clearly the ringleader of this disaster. "They always jump at that because it makes them think there's hope. While he's desperately trying to fix things you barely even need fixing, document everything. His texts, his desperate attempts to win you back, maybe even crying if you're lucky. We need content for the group chat, and honestly, Angela, it'll be good for you to see what he's really made of." "What if he just agrees to separate?" Angela asked, and I could hear the nervousness creeping into her voice. "What if he doesn't fight for us?" The women laughed, actually laughed, like the idea of me not performing their expected emotional dance was absurd. "Oh honey," Linda said with that condescending tone she probably practiced. "Men always fight when they think they're losing their domestic setup. You've been handling everything at home, cooking, cleaning, making his life comfortable. Trust me, he'll panic at the thought of having to adult on his own. We've seen it work with Jessica's husband, remember? He bought her that ridiculous Cartier bracelet just to prove his devotion." "And Mark," Heather added. "Stephanie's test got her a trip to the Maldives and a promise to finally start that family she wanted. These men need to be reminded they have to earn us, not just expect us to stick around because we said vows." I pulled out my phone, hands surprisingly steady despite the rage building in my chest. I opened the voice recorder app and started capturing this conversation, evidence of the calculated cruelty being planned in my own home. This wasn't spontaneous insecurity or legitimate relationship concerns. This was premeditated manipulation designed to humiliate me and extract gestures of devotion like I was some kind of performing seal. "What about the aftermath?" Angela asked, and I could hear her moving around, probably pacing the way she did when she was anxious. After he's proven himself, how do I walk it back without looking crazy? You don't walk it back completely, Linda instructed. You let him think his grand gestures saved the marriage. You graciously accept his renewed commitment. You've established that you could leave any time, which means he'll work harder to keep you happy. It's relationship maintenance, Angela. Sometimes you need to shake things up to remind them what they have. My thumb pressed stop on the recording. I had enough. More than enough, actually. The casual cruelty in their voices, the way they discussed emotional manipulation like it was relationship advice from some magazine, the complete lack of regard for the damage they might cause to real marriages, to real people who actually loved each other. I backed away from the window and walked to my truck, needing distance and time to think before I confronted this nightmare. My hands gripped the steering wheel hard enough to hurt, knuckles white with the effort of not storming inside and ending this entire charade right now. But something stopped me. Maybe it was years of construction work teaching me that sometimes you need to let structures fail completely before you can rebuild them properly. Maybe it was the realization that Angela's willingness to participate in this sick game revealed something fundamental about who she'd become, or maybe who she'd always been underneath the woman I thought I'd married. I started the engine and pulled out of the driveway, leaving Angela and her conspirators to continue planning my emotional demolition. They wanted a test? They wanted to see what I was made of? Fine. But I'd be running my own experiment now, and they wouldn't know they were participants until it was far too late to salvage what they were so casually destroying. The coffee shop 3 blocks away had parking in the back, secluded enough that Angela wouldn't spot my truck if she drove past. I needed time to think, to plan, to figure out how to respond to this betrayal without becoming the desperate, emotional mess they expected. My phone buzzed with a text from Angela asking what I wanted for dinner, such perfect domestic normalcy while she was literally plotting to fake end our marriage for her friends' entertainment. I typed back that anything was fine, I'd be home around 5. Let her think everything was normal. Let her continue preparing for her performance while I prepared mine. Because if Angela wanted to test whether I'd fight for our marriage, she was about to learn exactly what I was willing to fight for, and it wasn't a relationship built on manipulation, lies, and the toxic influence of women who treated marriages like reality TV shows they could script for their own amusement. I sat in that coffee shop parking lot for 30 minutes, just processing what I'd overheard while my coffee went cold in the cup holder. The rational part of my brain kept trying to find innocent explanations. Maybe they were discussing a book plot or some hypothetical scenario, but the recording on my phone eliminated all doubt. I played it back twice, listening to my wife casually agree to psychologically torture me for entertainment, to document my pain for her friends' group chat like I was some kind of social experiment. The Angela I married wouldn't have done this, or maybe she would have and I'd just been too trusting to see it. I thought about confronting her immediately, walking back into that house and playing the recording for everyone, watching their faces as they realized I'd caught them. The vindication would feel good for about 30 seconds before the real damage set in, the relationship imploding in accusations and defensiveness, her friends rallying around her with excuses about how I was overreacting or taking things out of context. No, I needed a different approach. I needed to let Angela commit fully to this scheme, let her reveal exactly who she'd become when she thought I was ignorant and vulnerable. Only then would she understand what she'd destroyed with her willingness to play games with our marriage. I pulled out my phone and started researching, typing, how to document emotional manipulation and evidence for divorce proceedings into Google. I wasn't sure I wanted a divorce, but I needed to be prepared for that outcome, needed to understand my options if Angela's test revealed that our marriage was already dead and I just hadn't noticed the corpse yet. The articles I found painted a grim picture of relationships where one partner treated the other's emotions as toys to manipulate, where trust became a weapon instead of a foundation. By 4:30, I had a plan. I'd go home, act completely normal, and let Angela proceed with her theatrical breakup when she felt ready. But instead of the desperate, emotional response she expected, I'd give her something else entirely: calm acceptance, practical planning, maybe even enthusiasm about reclaiming my independence. Let her friends watch their carefully constructed test backfire when I refused to perform my assigned role as the panicked husband. I'd document everything, every conversation, every manipulation attempt, every moment she tried to manufacture drama for her audience. And when the time was right, when she'd fully committed to this charade and realized it wasn't going the way she'd planned, I'd reveal that I'd known from the beginning. I pulled back into our driveway at 5:07, exactly when I said I'd be home. Linda's Range Rover was gone, her toxic influence temporarily removed from my house but permanently embedded in my wife's willingness to betray me. I grabbed my lunch cooler and walked through the side entrance like nothing had changed, like I hadn't just spent the last 90 minutes planning the potential end of my marriage. Angela was in the kitchen, and the scene would have been touching if I didn't know the truth. She'd made my favorite meal, her grandmother's pot roast recipe that she only broke out for special occasions, and the whole house smelled like comfort and home. Her hands were trembling slightly as she chopped carrots for the salad, and I noticed her phone face down on the counter, probably full of messages from her co-conspirators asking how she felt about the upcoming performance. "Hey babe," I said, keeping my voice warm and normal. "Something smells incredible." She jumped slightly, hadn't heard me come in. "Oh, you're home. I thought I'd make something nice since it's Tuesday." Tuesday meant nothing, we'd never had special Tuesday dinners before, but I played along. "Well, I'm not complaining. Client meeting got cancelled so I finished early. Anything I can help with?" No, just relax," she said quickly, and I caught her studying my face like she was looking for signs that I suspected something. "How was your day?" I launched into a detailed description of the permitting issues at work, watching her nod along while her mind was clearly elsewhere. She kept glancing at her phone, kept touching her hair the way she did when she was nervous, kept practicing these little facial expressions like she was rehearsing for a play. When she thought I was focused on setting the table, I caught her making this exaggerated sad face in the reflection of the microwave door, apparently working on her crying technique for the big performance. Over dinner, I was aggressively normal, asking about her day, complimenting the pot roast, discussing whether we should finally replace the fence in the backyard. Angela responded with distracted agreement, barely eating despite cooking this elaborate meal. I watched her type furiously under the table, presumably updating Linda and the others on her progress, telling them she was building up to the big moment. "You seem distant," I said, testing the waters. "Everything okay?" Her eyes went wide for a second, like I'd caught her, then she composed herself. "Just tired. Book club was intense today, lot of discussion about relationship dynamics in the novel we're reading." "Which book?" I asked innocently, knowing full well they'd spent the meeting plotting manipulation instead of discussing literature. She fumbled for a title, mentioned something about domestic suspense, and I nodded like I believed her. The ease with which she lied to my face was almost impressive, made me wonder how many other times she'd deceived me while I'd trusted every word. After dinner, I volunteered to do the dishes while she relaxed, playing the considerate husband role perfectly. She disappeared into our bedroom, probably for more strategy sessions with her friends, while I loaded the dishwasher and planned my next moves. I'd be the perfect husband for the next few days, give her no ammunition to justify her fake crisis, no legitimate complaints she could exaggerate into relationship problems. When Angela finally launched her performance, it would be completely manufactured, transparently fake to anyone who'd been paying attention to how good things actually were between us. The performance came Sunday morning during brunch, perfectly timed for maximum dramatic effect. I'd just finished making Belgian waffles from scratch, her favorite, when Angela sat down across from me with that rehearsed expression of deep contemplation I'd watched her practice in every reflective surface for the past 2 days. Her hands were clasped together on the table, she'd done her makeup to look naturally tear-stained, and she took this long, shaky breath that would have won her an Oscar if I didn't know it was complete fiction. "Ryan, we need to talk about us," she began, voice trembling exactly like Linda had probably coached her. "I've been doing a lot of thinking, and I feel like I'm losing myself in this marriage. I need space to rediscover who I am as an individual, to figure out what I really want from life." I took a bite of waffle, chewed thoughtfully, and watched her face flicker with confusion when I didn't immediately panic. "Okay," I said simply. "If that's what you need." She blinked, clearly thrown off script already. "Okay? That's all you have to say? Well, if you're unhappy, we should definitely address that," I replied, pulling out my phone. Should we call a real estate agent today or wait until Monday? Sunday showings might actually work in our favor, less competition. The color drained from her face. Real estate agent? What are you talking about? For selling the house, I explained patiently, already Googling divorce attorneys in Denver. If we're separating, we'll need to divide assets. The house is our biggest one, makes sense to get ahead of that process. I'm thinking we should probably aim for a 60-day closing timeline, gives us both time to find new places without rushing. Angela's carefully constructed emotional facade was crumbling faster than I could have hoped. You want to sell our house? You said you need space to find yourself, I pointed out, opening a spreadsheet app on my phone. Can't really do that while we're living together, right? Let me just calculate our equity position real quick. We bought at 280, put down 56,000, been paying for 4 years at 3.2% interest. I started typing numbers while she stared at me like I'd grown a second head. After closing costs and agent fees, we're probably looking at about 42,000 each. That's a decent start for new apartments. I didn't say I wanted a divorce, she protested, her practiced sadness replaced by genuine panic. I just need some time to think. Right? Separation, I agreed. But we should still get the financial stuff sorted out. Oh, and we'll need to figure out custody arrangements for Biscuit. Biscuit was our 3-year-old golden retriever, and mentioning him made Angela's eyes actually well up with real tears. Custody? For our dog. I'm thinking alternating weeks makes sense, I continued, completely committed to this bit now. I'll take him Mondays through Sundays 1 week, you get him the next. We can meet at that dog park on Morrison Road for the handoffs, neutral territory and all that. I could see her trying to process this, trying to figure out how her test had transformed into an actual separation discussion with logistical planning. This wasn't in Linda's playbook. The husband wasn't supposed to embrace the breakup with spreadsheet efficiency. You've clearly been thinking about this, she said slowly, accusation creeping into her voice. Actually, I just started researching during my lunch breaks this week. I lied smoothly. After you mentioned needing space on Tuesday, I wanted to be prepared to support whatever decision you made. Found this great divorce attorney who specializes in amicable separations, very reasonable rates. Her name's Jennifer Caldwell, she has a 92% client satisfaction rating. Angela's mouth opened and closed like a fish. You've been researching divorce attorneys? Well, yeah, I said, acting confused by her surprise. You said you're losing yourself in our marriage. That's pretty serious stuff, Angela. I figured we should be practical about the next steps rather than dragging this out with false hope. I stood up and started clearing the table, the perfect picture of a man efficiently managing a crisis. Oh, and I was thinking about the retirement accounts. We'll need to do a QDRO for my 401k, that's a qualified domestic relations order, prevents tax penalties when we split it. I've been contributing for 8 years, so you're entitled to half of the marital portion, probably around 38,000. Stop, Angela said, her voice breaking with real emotion now. Just stop with all the planning. This isn't what I wanted. What did you want? I asked, turning to face her with deliberate innocence. You said you need space to find yourself. I'm trying to give you that space as efficiently as possible. Would you prefer I fight against your clearly stated needs? That seems counterproductive and honestly kind of selfish. She had no answer for that, trapped by her own fabricated crisis. If she admitted she didn't really want separation, she'd have to explain why she brought it up. If she stuck to her story, she'd have to accept my helpful cooperation in dismantling our marriage. I thought you'd be more upset, she finally whispered. I thought we had something worth fighting for. We did have something worth fighting for, I agreed. Past tense. But you just told me you're losing yourself in it, that you need to rediscover who you are without me. I'm not going to beg you to stay in a situation that makes you unhappy, Angela. I have too much respect for both of us to do that pathetic, desperate husband routine. I watched that land, watched her realize that her test had backfired completely. She wanted me to fight, to prove my devotion through dramatic gestures and emotional breakdowns. Instead, I was cheerfully planning our divorce like it was a project with milestones and deliverables. Maybe we could try couples therapy first, she suggested desperately, and I almost laughed at the predictability. There was Linda's bait suggestion, right on schedule. We could work through this together, figure out how to help me find myself while staying married. Throwing good money after bad, I said with a sad smile. You've clearly already checked out emotionally, Angela. Therapy only works when both people actually want to stay married. Would you rather we waste thousands of dollars and 6 months of sessions just to arrive at the same conclusion? That seems cruel to both of us. Her phone buzzed on the table, probably her friends asking for updates on my emotional breakdown. Instead, they were going to get a very different story about the husband who enthusiastically embraced the separation their manipulation scheme created. I need to think about this, she said, standing abruptly. No rush, I replied. Take all the time you need. I'm going to start boxing up my stuff for the spare bedroom. Figured I'd move in there until we sort out the house situation. Gives us both some immediate space. Over the next week, I committed to my role as the supportive husband of separation with Oscar-worthy dedication. I moved my clothes to the spare bedroom, set up a temporary living space with my laptop and books, and even hung a few pictures on the walls like I was settling in for the long haul. Every morning, I'd cheerfully update Angela on my apartment hunting progress over coffee, showing her listings for one-bedroom places near work that had reasonable rent and allowed dogs for alternating custody weeks. This one has a nice balcony for Biscuit, I'd say, swiping through photos on my phone. And it's only a 15-minute drive to the handoff location we discussed. Very convenient for both of us. Angela would stare at me like I'd lost my mind, her coffee cup frozen halfway to her lips. She'd stopped eating much, I noticed, probably because her appetite disappeared along with her confidence in this manipulation scheme. The desperate attempts to walk back her decision started on day 3. Maybe I was too hasty about needing space, she suggested during dinner, pushing food around her plate. What if we tried a romantic getaway instead? Just reconnect, remember why we fell in love. I looked up from my meal prep containers. I'd started batch cooking for one to save money in my upcoming bachelor life. A vacation together when you just said you need space from me? That's contradictory, Angela. Besides, I already put a hold on our joint credit cards, didn't want any unexpected charges during the asset division process. You froze our credit cards? Her voice went up an octave. Not froze, just put a hold pending our separation agreement, I corrected. My attorney suggested it as a protective measure. Don't worry, I transferred your half of our checking account to your personal account, should be about $6,000. That'll cover expenses until we finalize everything. The panic in her eyes was delicious. This wasn't how the test was supposed to go. I was supposed to be the desperate one, not her. What if we renewed our vows? She tried the next day, voice trembling with genuine desperation now. Like a fresh start, reaffirming our commitment to each other? Spend money on a ceremony for vows you already broke? I asked, genuinely curious about her logic. That seems wasteful, Angela. You clearly stated our marriage is making you lose yourself. I'm just respecting that truth. Why would I trap you in something that makes you unhappy? She had no answer, just retreated to our bedroom, her bedroom now I guess, and I heard her on the phone with her friends. The conversations were heated, whispered arguments about how this wasn't supposed to happen, how I was supposed to be fighting for her, not cheerfully dismantling our life together. I took Biscuit for long walks during these calls, giving her privacy to panic with her co-conspirators. By day 5, I'd scheduled consultations with 3 different divorce attorneys, carefully leaving the appointment confirmations on the kitchen counter where Angela would see them. I'd also started openly browsing furniture for my future apartment, asking her opinion on whether I should go with the gray couch or the navy one for my new bachelor pad. The gray is more versatile, I explained, showing her the options on my tablet. But the navy might make the space feel more masculine, more like a fresh start, you know? I don't want to help you decorate your apartment, she snapped, the first real anger breaking through her manufactured sadness. I want you to fight for our marriage. But you said you need space to find yourself, I reminded her gently, like explaining something to a child. I'm trying to support that journey, Angela. Would you prefer I be one of those controlling husbands who ignores their wife's clearly stated needs? That seems pretty toxic. The trap was perfect. Anything she said now would contradict her original performance. If she admitted she didn't really need space, she'd have to explain why she lied. If she insisted she did need it, she'd have to accept my helpful cooperation in providing that space permanently. On day 6, I casually mentioned which friends I'd stay closer to post-divorce during our awkward shared breakfast. Obviously, I'll still hang with the guys from our couples game nights, but I figure you'll probably want them since they're more your crowd anyway. I've been thinking about reconnecting with some college buddies, maybe join that adult soccer league Dan keeps inviting me to. You're dividing up our friends already? Angela's voice cracked. Just being practical, I said, spreading peanut butter on my toast with careful precision. Divorce gets messy when people try to maintain the same social circle. Easier if we establish separate groups now, avoid awkwardness later. I watched her face crumple, watched the reality of actual consequences sink in. This wasn't a game anymore, wasn't a test she could abort when it stopped being fun. I'd taken her fake crisis and turned it into a real separation, complete with legal consultations, financial divisions, and social restructuring. I think I made a mistake, she whispered. About what? About needing space. About all of it. I don't actually want a separation, Ryan. I set down my toast and looked at her directly, letting silence stretch between us. Then why did you say you did? I was confused, she fumbled. I've been stressed, and I let my emotions get the better of me. But I realize now that what I really need is us, together, working through things. Working through what things? I pressed. You never mentioned any actual problems in our marriage, Angela. You just said you're losing yourself. That's not a problem I can fix, that's an identity crisis you need to resolve independently. She started crying then, real tears that had nothing to do with Linda's coaching. Please, can we just go back to how things were before? Pretend this never happened. We can't pretend away the truth, I said softly. You revealed something fundamental about how you see our marriage, how willing you are to throw it away when you feel like you need to find yourself. That's not something I can just forget. I'll do anything, she begged. Therapy, counseling, whatever you want. Just please don't leave me. I stood up, putting my plate in the dishwasher with deliberate calm. I'm not leaving you, Angela. You're leaving me, remember? I'm just making it easier for you to do what you clearly want to do deep down. As I walked away to get ready for work, I heard her sobbing at the kitchen table, her phone buzzing with messages from friends who were probably wondering why their entertainment had turned into a disaster. Let them wonder, I thought. Let them all see what happens when you treat someone's heart like a toy to play with. The revelation came on day 8, over dinner at Maggiano's, the Italian place where we'd had our first date 6 years ago. Angela had begged for this dinner, called it a last chance to talk before I signed with an attorney, and I'd agreed because I knew this was when I'd finally play my trump card. She dressed up for the occasion, wearing the blue dress I'd always loved, and she'd clearly been crying before I picked her up because her eyes were puffy despite fresh makeup. We ordered wine, made small talk about nothing, and I watched her work up the courage to make her final plea. I need you to know something, she began, voice shaking. I love you, Ryan. I've always loved you, and I was an idiot for saying I needed space. It was the stupidest thing I've ever done. I nodded, sipping my wine. Okay. Okay? That's all you're going to say. Her frustration was building. I'm pouring my heart out here, and you're acting like I'm talking about the weather. What do you want me to say, Angela? I asked. That I forgive you? That we can go back to normal? We can't go back to something that was clearly broken if you were willing to throw it away so easily. It wasn't easy, she protested. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. Really? I pulled out my phone, placed it on the table between us. Because from what I heard, it seemed pretty calculated and rehearsed. Her face went white. What are you talking about? I tapped the screen, opening the voice recording app. I think you know exactly what I'm talking about. I pressed play on the recording, the volume just loud enough for her to hear through my wireless earbuds that I handed across the table. I watched the color drain from her face as she heard her own voice discussing the manipulation plot with Linda and the others. Watched her hands start trembling as Linda explained how to cry on command, how to mention couples therapy as bait, how to document my desperate reactions for the group chat. When the recording ended, she just sat there, frozen, the earbuds dangling from her hand. "You knew," she finally whispered. "The whole time. Since Tuesday afternoon when I came home early and heard you plotting my emotional destruction in our living room." I took the earbuds back, put them in my pocket. "I've known since before your performance even started." "Why didn't you say anything?" Her voice was barely audible. "Because I needed to see if you'd actually go through with it," I explained calmly. "I needed to know if the woman I married was someone who would betray me for her friend's entertainment, or if you'd back out when you realized how wrong it was." Tears were streaming down her face now, real ones born from genuine shame and horror. "I'm so sorry." "You're sorry you got caught," I corrected. "You're sorry your manipulation test backfired. You're not sorry you were willing to put me through psychological torture for Linda's amusement." "That's not true. I realized it was wrong. That's why I tried to stop it." "You tried to stop it because I wasn't playing my role as the desperate husband," I said. "You weren't getting the validation you wanted, weren't getting the grand gestures and emotional breakdowns your friends promised. The test failed because I refused to be tested." Angela reached across the table for my hand, but I pulled away. "Please, Ryan. I was stupid and weak and I let those women poison my mind against you. But I love you, I've always loved you." "Then why wasn't that love enough?" I asked. "Why did you need to test it, to measure it, to prove it through manufactured crisis? Why did you need to see me broken and desperate to feel secure in our marriage?" She had no answer, just sat there crying silently while other diners glanced our way with concern. I signaled the waiter for the check. This conversation was over. "The problem isn't that you wanted to test me," I said quietly. "It's that you were willing to betray everything we built together because your friends told you to. That you valued their toxic advice over our relationship, over my feelings, over basic human decency." "I'll cut them off," she said desperately. "I'll never talk to Linda or any of them again. I'll do whatever it takes." "You should cut them off regardless," I replied. "But not because I'm asking you to. Because they're toxic people who convinced you to torture your husband for fun." The waiter brought the check and I paid it, my card, not our joint card that I'd actually frozen days ago. Angela watched me sign the receipt with shaking hands, probably realizing this was it, the end of everything. "I notice you're not wearing your ring," she said, looking at my bare left hand. "No," I agreed. "I'm not." "When did you take it off?" "Tuesday night, after I heard you planning to fake break up with me. Seemed appropriate since you were already planning to end things, even if it was just pretend." We walked to the car in silence, drove home without speaking. The comfortable silence we used to share had been replaced by the oppressive quiet of two strangers who'd run out of things to say. When we pulled into the driveway, Angela turned to me with desperate eyes. "What happens now?" "I don't know," I admitted. "You destroyed something I thought was unbreakable. You showed me that when your friends pressure you, when they offer you validation and entertainment, you'll sacrifice my well-being without hesitation. That's not something I can just forget." "But you still love me," she said, like it was a fact. "You must still love me or you wouldn't be this hurt." "Love isn't enough when there's no respect," I told her. "And Angela, you showed me exactly how little you respect me when you agreed to make our marriage into a reality show for your book club." I got out of the car, headed for the house, leaving her sitting in the passenger seat. Through the rearview mirror I'd angled before we left, I could see her crying, shoulders shaking with the weight of what she'd destroyed. Could have let her feel a fraction of what she planned to put me through. Let her understand the cost of treating love like a game. The book club met every third Thursday at Linda's pretentious McMansion in Cherry Creek, and this month's gathering was happening in 2 days. I knew because Angela's phone still synced calendar notifications to our shared tablet, and I'd been planning my appearance for over a week. She didn't know I was coming, nobody did, but it was time to expose this manipulation scheme to everyone who'd participated or enabled it. I recruited my buddy Marcus from work to drive me, told him the whole story, and watched his face go from disbelief to rage on my behalf. "Bro, that's psychotic," he said. "They were literally coaching her to emotionally abuse you for entertainment? And documenting it for their group chat." I added. Like I was some kind of social experiment. Thursday evening, I showed up at Linda's house at 7:15, right when the wine would be flowing and inhibitions would be lowered. Marcus waited in the car, engine running in case things got heated and I needed a quick exit. I could hear laughter through the front door, the sound of women who thought they'd gotten away with something clever. I rang the doorbell, heard the laughter stop, heard footsteps approaching. Linda opened the door, her face shifting from hostess smile to confusion when she saw me. "Ryan? What are you doing here?" "Evening, Linda," I said pleasantly. "Mind if I join book club tonight? I've got something to share that I think everyone will find interesting." Behind her, I could see the living room full of women, Angela among them looking absolutely horrified. The color had drained from her face and she was half standing from the couch like she might run. "This is a private gathering," Linda started, but I was already stepping inside. "I insist." The room went silent as I walked to the center, pulling out my tablet. 8 women stared at me with varying expressions of confusion, concern, and in Angela's case, pure terror. I recognized most of them, book club regulars who probably all knew about the manipulation scheme. "Ladies," I began, my voice calm and professional like I was presenting at a work meeting. "I'm here tonight because I recently discovered that this book club has been engaging in some activities that have nothing to do with literature." "You need to leave," Linda said, trying to regain control. "Not until everyone hears what I have to say," I replied. "See, 2 weeks ago, I came home early and overheard a very interesting conversation. My wife Angela, with coaching from several of you, was planning to stage a fake breakup to test my devotion. I pulled up the recording on my tablet. I've documented everything. The initial planning session, the group chat messages where you mocked my expected desperation, even the escalation strategies you suggested when the test didn't go as planned." I started playing the recording through the tablet speaker, watching faces go pale as they heard their own voices discussing the manipulation. Linda's smug confidence crumbled. Heather tried to grab for my tablet, but I stepped back. Other women looked genuinely shocked, clearly not part of the inner circle that had planned this. "This is harassment," Linda sputtered. "You're invading our privacy." "Privacy?" I laughed. "You plan to invade my emotional privacy, to manufacture a crisis in my marriage for your entertainment, and document my pain for your group chat. But I'm the one harassing you." I turned to address the room. "How many of you knew about this? How many participated in coaching Angela to psychologically torture her husband?" Silence, then slowly, 3 hands went up besides Linda's. Angela, Heather, and a woman named Tiffany who I'd always thought seemed nice. The others looked genuinely appalled. "And how many of your husbands have been subjected to similar tests?" I asked. The reactions told me everything. 2 women, Jessica and Stephanie, exchanged guilty looks. Another, Michelle, suddenly became very interested in her wine glass. "Let me guess," I continued. "Jessica, your husband bought you that Cartier bracelet after you tested him? And Stephanie, that Maldives trip was his desperate attempt to prove his devotion after you manufactured some crisis?" Jessica's face went red. "That's none of your business." "It became my business when you used it as a success story to encourage Angela," I shot back. I looked around the room at the husband's absent faces in the family photos on Linda's walls. "Your partners deserve to know what you've been doing. They deserve to know that their wives see them as ATMs and entertainment, not as human beings worthy of respect." "This is ridiculous," Linda tried again. "We were just giving relationship advice." "Advice?" I pulled up screenshots from their group chat on my tablet, the ones Angela had left open on her laptop during one of her panicked strategy sessions. "Let's see, here's Heather saying, 'I love watching men squirm when they think they're losing us.' Here's you, Linda, explaining how to escalate emotional manipulation if the initial test doesn't work. And here's Tiffany suggesting Angela document my crying for leverage in future arguments." The room erupted. Women who hadn't been part of the scheme started demanding explanations. Michelle's friend Karen turned to her. "Is this what you did to David last year? The whole, 'I need to find myself' speech?" Michelle's silence was answer enough. I turned to Angela, who was crying silently on the couch. "Tell them," I said. Tell them how it felt when your manipulation backfired. When I enthusiastically helped you plan our divorce instead of begging you to stay. He knew the whole time, Angela whispered. He heard us planning it and he just let me destroy everything. The betrayal cut both ways now, and watching her face the social consequences felt like justice. Several women were already gathering their things, shooting disgusted looks at Linda's inner circle. You're all toxic, one woman said. Later I learned her name was Rebecca. I thought this was about supporting each other, not playing psychological games with our marriages. Wait, Linda called out as women started leaving. You're overreacting. This is just how modern relationships work. You have to keep men on their toes. By emotionally abusing them? Rebecca shot back. By treating them like they're less than human? That's not relationship advice, that's sociopathic. I watched the book club implode, women taking sides, friendships ending in real time. Angela sat frozen, watching her social circle collapse because of her choices. The women who'd participated in the scheme were being ostracized by those who hadn't, and several people were pulling out phones to call their husbands with confessions and apologies. I'm seriously considering divorce, I announced into the chaos. Not because of the test itself, though that was cruel enough, but because Angela chose peer pressure over our marriage. She chose Linda's toxic validation over my well-being. She chose to be someone I don't recognize. Linda tried one last time to regain control. Get out of my house. Gladly, I said, heading for the door. But know that I've sent copies of everything to every husband whose wife participated in this scheme. They deserve to know what their partners think of them. As I walked out, I heard Angela call my name, desperate and broken. I didn't turn around. Marcus was waiting in the car, engine running like I'd asked. How'd it go? He asked as I climbed in. Better than expected, I replied. Though I think I just ended several marriages besides my own. Good, Marcus said firmly. People who treat love like a game deserve to lose. We drove away from Linda's house, leaving chaos in our wake. My phone started buzzing with messages almost immediately, angry texts from Linda calling me horrible names, desperate pleas from Angela begging me to come home, even a few thank you messages from husbands who'd apparently just learned what their wives had done. I silenced them all and focused on breathing, on processing what I'd just done. The vindication felt good, but underneath it was still the pain of betrayal, still the knowledge that my marriage was probably over. Angela had made her choice when she decided to play games with our relationship, and I'd made mine when I decided to expose the truth to everyone who needed to hear it. Angela was waiting when I got home, sitting on the front steps like a ghost haunting her own life. Her face was blotchy from crying, mascara streaked down her cheeks, and she looked smaller somehow, diminished by the consequences of her choices. I walked past her toward the door, but she grabbed my arm. Please, Ryan. We need to talk about what happens next. I looked at her hand on my sleeve, then at her desperate eyes. What happens next is up to you, I said. You've destroyed the foundation of our marriage. Whether we rebuild or not depends entirely on whether you're willing to do the actual work. I'll do anything, she said immediately, the same promise she'd made before. But this time felt different, heavier with genuine understanding of what she'd lost. I sat down on the steps beside her, maintaining distance between us. Here's what has to happen if we're even going to attempt to save this, I began. First, you cut off all contact with Linda, Heather, Tiffany, and anyone else who participated in that manipulation scheme. Block them on everything, no exceptions. She nodded frantically. Done. I never want to see any of them again. Second, individual therapy. Not couples therapy, individual. You need to figure out why you're so easily influenced by toxic people, why you chose their validation over our marriage. I'll find someone tomorrow, she promised. I'll go twice a week if you want. Third, complete financial transparency. You give me access to everything, every account, every credit card, every purchase. You've broken my trust, you need to earn it back through total honesty. Her face fell slightly at that, but she agreed. Whatever it takes. Fourth, you write apology letters to every couple affected by this scheme. Not just to the wives you manipulated with, but to their husbands who were being tested without consent. You own what you did publicly. That's humiliating, she whispered. Not as humiliating as what you planned to do to me, I countered. You wanted to document my pain for entertainment. This is you taking accountability for participating in that cruelty. She was quiet for a long moment. And if I do all of this, we'll stay together? If you do all of this, I'll consider whether staying together is even possible, I corrected. I make no promises, Angela. You shattered something fundamental between us. These conditions are the bare minimum for me to even think about reconciliation. How long? She asked. How long until you know? Maybe a year. However long it takes for you to prove through consistent actions that you've actually changed, that you're someone I can trust again. I stood up, headed for the door. And Angela? If I catch you in contact with any of those women, if you miss a single therapy session, if I find out you're not being completely honest about anything, we're done immediately. No second chances. The first week was brutal. Angela blocked her entire friend group, went from a social butterfly to essentially isolated except for work. She found a therapist who specialized in peer pressure and toxic relationships, started sessions 3 times a week instead of the twice I'd required. She wrote those apology letters, each one genuine and painful, taking full responsibility without making excuses. I read them before she sent them, made her rewrite 2 that still tried to shift blame. Watching her face the consequences of her actions was satisfying in a grim way, but it didn't heal the wound she'd created. I still moved through our house like we were roommates, still slept in the spare bedroom, still kept emotional walls firmly in place. She'd cry sometimes when she thought I couldn't hear, which was often since I could hear everything through our thin walls. 1 month in, her therapist requested a joint session. Dr. Patterson was a no-nonsense woman in her 50s who didn't sugarcoat anything. Angela's been doing the work, she told me directly. She's confronting some deep insecurities about self-worth and belonging that made her vulnerable to manipulation. But Ryan, you need to decide if you're actually open to reconciliation or if you're just punishing her. I'm protecting myself, I replied. There's a difference. Is there? Dr. Patterson challenged. Because from what Angela describes, you're holding the possibility of reconciliation over her head while refusing to engage emotionally. That's its own form of manipulation. That hit harder than I expected. Was I being cruel by making her jump through hoops while keeping my heart locked away? She tried to psychologically torture me for her friend's entertainment, I said. I think I'm entitled to some protection. Absolutely, Dr. Patterson agreed. But at some point, you need to decide if you're healing or just inflicting reciprocal pain. Angela can't prove she's changed if you never give her the opportunity to be trusted again. 3 months in, Angela had transformed in visible ways. She'd lost the nervous energy that came from constantly seeking external validation. She'd started painting again, something she'd given up years ago. She volunteered at a women's shelter twice a week, working with abuse survivors and learning about healthy relationship dynamics from the other direction. The apology letters had actually helped repair some of the damage to other marriages, with several couples reaching out to thank her for the wake-up call that led them to therapy. I started seeing glimpses of the woman I'd married, the one I'd fallen for before Linda's toxic influence. 6 months after that disastrous book club meeting, I came home to find Angela in the kitchen, cooking dinner like she used to. But something was different. She wasn't doing it desperately, trying to win me back. She was doing it because she wanted to, humming along to music, content in her own space. Smells good, I said, surprising both of us by actually engaging. She turned, gave me a small smile. Chicken piccata. I know it's your favorite, but I made it for me too. Trying to remember things I enjoy doing, not just things I do to please others. That night, we ate dinner together at the table instead of in separate rooms. We really talked, about her therapy insights, about my struggle to trust again, about whether we could build something new from the ruins of what she'd destroyed. I don't know if I can ever forget what you did, I admitted. I wouldn't want you to, she replied. I need to live with the consequences of my choices. But maybe we can build something where that betrayal is part of our history instead of our entire story. 1 year after the fake breakup scheme, we were in a different place. Not back to where we were, that innocent trust was gone forever. But we'd built something new, more honest, more resilient. Angela had maintained every single condition I'd set. No contact with her toxic former friends, consistent therapy, complete transparency, ongoing accountability. I'd slowly let my walls down, testing whether the changes were real. We'd gone to couples therapy, worked through the trauma together. I'd moved back into our bedroom, though some nights I still struggled with memories of her betrayal. The ring went back on my finger 6 months ago, though I'd made her understand it could come off again if she ever broke my trust. She accepted that, understood that some damage leaves permanent scars. Linda's book club dissolved completely. Several marriages ended, others rebuilt like ours. Angela became an advocate against relationship manipulation, speaking at therapy groups about the damage caused by toxic friend dynamics and peer pressure in marriages. She used her shame as fuel for helping others avoid the same mistakes. I never fully healed from the betrayal, but I learned to live with the scar tissue. Angela proved through consistent action over time that she'd genuinely changed, that the woman who'd agreed to torture me for entertainment was gone, replaced by someone who understood the sacred responsibility of loving someone. Our marriage survived, but it was different. Harder one, more honest, built on brutal truth instead of blind trust. Some nights I still wondered if I should have walked away completely, if staying was strength or weakness. But watching Angela work every single day to be worthy of a second chance, seeing her transform pain into purpose, I knew I'd made the right choice for us. Not every betrayal deserves forgiveness, but some people genuinely learn from their mistakes. Angela spent a year proving she was one of them, and I spent a year learning that love isn't about never being hurt, it's about deciding what you're willing to heal from together. The fake breakup test destroyed our old marriage, but from those ruins, we built something more real than what Linda's manipulation had tried to measure.